This next story takes place out of Macon, Georgia, or Macon, Georgia. Headlines read, a Gangster Disciples assistant chief enforcer sentenced to life in prison for gang-related M's. A high-ranking member of the Gangster Disciples convicted of a murderous conspiracy stemming from gang-related retribution that resulted in the shooting deaths of 3 Athens, Georgia men was sentenced to life in federal prison without parole. Lesley Chappell Green, aka Grip, 35, of Stone Mountain, was sentenced to life in prison by Chief U.S. District Judge Marc Treadwell on February 20th. Green, along with 2 co-defendants, was convicted by a federal jury of racketeer influence and corruption organization conspiracy, the RICO conspiracy, on August 17, 2023. Green is not eligible for parole. No sentence could ever ease the pain that Lesley Green inflicted on the families of the murder victims in this tragic case, said U.S. Attorney Peter D. Leary. The Gangster Disciples are a strategically violent organization whose members willingly committed these monstrous crimes. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Georgia will join with our law enforcement partners to prosecute such crimes to the fullest extent of the law. While this life sentence can never undo the loss of the affected family, it sends a message that justice will prevail, said Athens Clark County Police Chief Jerry Salters. We are grateful to our officers for their continued support of the case of those involved in the prosecution. Our community is safer because of your efforts. Protecting the safety of our communities is fundamental to what we do at the FBI, said Robert Gibbs, Supervisory Senior Special Agent of FBI Atlanta Athens office. The FBI is committed to reducing violent crime and combating the threat people like Lesley Green pose to our communities and residents. We are proud to work alongside our local, state, and federal partners to bring violent members of criminal organizations, the Gangster Disciples, to justice. 2 co-defendants convicted with Green at trial will be sentenced on March 20th in Macon. Philmon Deshaun Chambers, a.k.a. Dollar Phil, 35, of Atlanta, was convicted of racketeer influence and corruption organization, RICO conspiracy, violent crime in aid of racketeering, M, carry and use of a firearm during and in relation to a crime of violence, and causing the death of a person using a firearm. Chambers face a mandatory minimum sentence of life in prison for the Vicar M offense, and a maximum of life in prison for each of the remaining offenses. Co-defendant Andrea Page Browner, aka Drea, 29, of Athens, Georgia, was convicted of racketeer influence and corruption organization and conspiracy, violent crime in aid of racketeering, M, and causing the death of a person using a firearm. Browner faces a mandatory minimum sentence of life in prison for the Vicar M offense and a maximum of life in prison for each of the remaining offenses. 2 co-defendants previously entered guilty pleas and will be sentenced on March 22nd in Macon. Robert Maurice Carlisle, aka Different, 37, of Lithonia, Georgia, pleaded guilty to racketeer influence and corruption organization on June 8th and is facing a maximum sentence of life in prison. Shabazz Larry Goodery, a.k.a. Lil Larry, 29, of Decatur, Georgia, pleaded guilty to racketeering, influence, and corruption organization conspiracy, and on June 8th, and is facing maximum sentence of life in prison. According to court documents, Chambers held a position of authority within the National Gangster Disciples criminal organization, which included overseeing members of the enforcement team. The enforcement team is directed to discipline gang members using physical assault, or M. Co-defendant Green was a member of the enforcement team and held the title of Assistant Chief Enforcer. Co-defendant Browner was a member of the Sisters of the Struggle, also known as SOS, a parallel female component of the Gangster Disciples, and held a leadership position in the gang. Evidence presented at trial proved that on December 10th, 2018, Gangster Disciples member Walter Brown was M'd in Athens, Georgia. Chambers and Browner sought retaliation for Brown's death and believed 3 unnamed Athens residents were responsible. On December 14, 2018, Browner met Rodriguez Apollo Rucker of Athens at a downtown Athens hotel and learned that Rucker was related to one of the individuals she believed Cade Brown. Browner texted Chambers, and Chambers came to the motel. Chambers followed Rucker home and shot and Cade him. Browner notified an associate of the Gangster Disciples that she and Chambers would be leaving town because the police would be looking for them. Browner was taken into custody in Mount Enterprise, Texas on December 15th, and Chambers got away. Chambers was suspicious that someone was cooperating with law enforcement and focused his suspicion on Derek Ruff and Joshua Jackson, who were in fact not cooperating with law enforcement. Chambers incorrectly concluded that Ruff and Jackson were snitches and directed Green, who held a subordinate position on the enforcement team, to carry out the M's of Ruff and Jackson. Text messages and intercepted phone calls between Chambers, Green, Carlisle, and Goodry revealed that Ruff and Jackson were lured by Green as directed by Chambers to drive from Athens to Lawrenceville to break into a storage shed and steal items to send to Chambers as aid and assistance. As he was hiding out from law enforcement in a Gangster Disciples safe house in Killeen, Texas, the ruse worked, and Ruff and Jackson were M'd on December 19th, and their bodies concealed in the storage unit until March 17, 2019, when police, with the assistance of cadaver-sniffing dogs, located them. Additional messages between Chambers and Green, Carlisle, and Goodry showed that they conspired to dispose of the victims' bodies, which included potentially burning the bodies or dumping the bodies in a landfill. Law enforcement recovered the bodies and made arrests before these plans could be carried out. Assistant U.S. Attorney Mike Morrison of the Middle District of Georgia is prosecuting the case with assistance from Assistant U.S. Attorney Stuart Walker of the Middle District of Georgia and the Department of Justice Criminal Division's Violent Crimes and Racketeering Section. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Throw your thoughts and opinions in the comment section. Much love, peace, blessings. Until next time, much gratitude.